Hi, we're live. This is KNL Live. My name is Kate. We are going to be talking with Gary Westby today. He is our champagne guru. He's been with the company for 20 years and he really has built it from the ground up. He is one of the first people to really promote, small grower producers. And he is the reason that we get amazing champagne in our store for really, really great prices. I've worked in a lot of places and getting so many bottles under $30, really solid, are spectacular. So we're going to wait for him to join us. I don't see him on yet, but this is an open forum. He's going to have a couple of recommendations for you guys, but if you have questions, he and his wife Cindy are amazing gourmands, so they are really the right people to ask for pairing questions, pairing tips. If you want to talk about magnums or aging, he is going to be your fella. So he should be here pretty soon. I don't see him on yet. How's everyone doing? What are you guys going to do for New Year's this year? I know it's different. It's going to be really different, but quiet is good, and we'll still have bubbles, right? Let's see. I see Cindy, but I don't see Gary yet. Ah, here he is. Hi,
Hello.
Gary.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great, just fighting with the technology.
Yeah, well, we got it, right? We're here.
Yes, we did.
Nice to see you in person. Well, virtually in person. Nice to see your
Yes.
face.
Well, nice to see yours too.
Just asking everybody what they're doing for New Year's this year. Do you have any plans?
Yeah, we're gonna have some cipino.
Oh, nice.
Apparently, we're gonna have some cipino, and we're gonna have this.
Espacier.
Yeah, a little Aspazi Blanc de Blanc from Magnum.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to be the two of us, so we'll probably have to put a stopper in it. But there's been so much interest in half bottles this year because of everybody doing everything so small. But personally, I really don't like the way they taste. There's the big difference between the sizes of champagne for the lees contact and the time on the lees.
Yeah.
For instance, this in 750 gets 4 years on the lees, but it gets 5+ in the Magnum. And in the 375, it gets 2. So there's when people ask me about half bottles, I always show them our stoppers.
Yeah.
Because the 750s are just, I think, so much better.
So I didn't know that. I just assumed the same wine, same bottles. I know they age differently because you get, less oxygen in a Magnum, right?
Yes, and that's true across the board for any type of wine that for any type of wine at all, is that you're going to get less of the bad aging from the oxygen in the larger format, because you basically have the same amount of oxygen content for double the volume, and in half bottles you get double the amount of oxygen contact. But with champagne, there's the other element, which is the surly aging time, and the Champenois know that the Magnums need more, so they give them more. So the premium that you pay on a Magnum is always, I think, one of very, very, very well worth it. And I think oftentimes I've explained to customers that they're better off if they have the people, which is the problem this year because not many of us have the people. You're better off to buy the Magnum than you are to go from the non-vintage of one producer up to the vintage. The difference is that big, and as many of the sales staff have been shown in the past, I do this setup tasting. As you know, tastings don't go to script. There's one tasting that goes to script, and that's to have the same thing, half bottle, 750 Magnum, I've never had it not go to script, and I've done it many times. The half bottle is always good. The 750 is always better, and the Magnum's always the best.
So if you've only got 2 people, like a lot of us these days, or 1, what do you just put a stopper in and drink it the next day? Do you think that's still?
Yeah, and I think that for people who might be moving on to red wine and maybe having port and all sorts of different things on New Year's Eve, having a 750 and stoppering it is going to get them a better quality experience than buying a half bottle. But it just means that the next day or the day after that or the day after that you got to get back to that bottle. But they really do well if you open it, you pour 2 glasses out of it, you put the stopper in it, you put it in the fridge. You don't really have to worry about that thing for another 3 or 4 days. It's going to be totally fine.
So Clyde's on with us, and he just said, made a comment that says Magnums are perfect for 2 people as a starter. Yeah, so you could drink like Clyde.
The Champenois say the Magnum's perfect for 2 people if one of them's not drinking.
Yeah. And this year we deserve to go big, I think. So
yes we do. I was going to say I have a couple of other things picked out.
Show me
if you'd like to see them. The theme that I've got for these 4 bottles, including the Asbazi, is that since it's a small thing this year, it's a lot of fun to do. Why not do things that are under the radar? It's not like you have to have a bottle for your boss who's coming over to show him that he's drinking something nice. People's bosses aren't coming over. There's no big group to impress, and we have many things in stock that are a really good value for money. But beyond that, they're just really good. And the one that I wanted to point out is this Baron Fuente Esprit here. This one is entirely estate grown. It's from out on the far western edge of Champagne, the part that's closest to Paris. And until probably 10 years ago or so, you didn't see any of the Champagne from Charlie-sur-Marne.
Why is that?
I'm sorry?
Why is that? Is it a warmer area, or is it just
you just didn't see it in the export market because it's the part that's closest to Paris.
So they were drinking it all.
It's just being consumed by the locals. They just drive the short distance to the western edge of Champagne to buy up everything that was made there. But we have now 2 producers, Baron Fuente and also Thalidart, from that area. The amazing thing about this is that it's a third, and a third, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Meunier, so completely classic Champagne blend. Very standard in that regard, but exceptional in that this is aged for 7 years on the lees. And
wow.
The only non-vintage that we have in stock besides this that is systematically aged for 7 years on the lees is Krug.
Wow. And this is a lot less than Krug, right? How much does this
$34.99.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it's just this incredibly high quality toasty style that's also, it's pretty much straight down the middle. It's not it's not an edgy sort of thing at all. It's just a pretty voluptuous, toasty, delicious bottle of champagne. Every time I bring it out with me somewhere to share with people, it's always just a huge hit. So that was one of the ones that I thought straight away.
So how did you find those folks at Baron Fuente? I mean, how are we doing this? How are we getting $34.99 for 7 years on the lees, amazing bottles?
Well, I mean, next year would have been, well, might still be my 20th vintage for tasting Van Clair. Tasted the 2000s back in 2001. That was my first trip over there for K&L. and we just built up a network the old-fashioned way by showing up every year, just the same way Clyde does it in Bordeaux. You just pack your bag and go over there and keep on showing up.
Knock on some doors. Yeah.
But it was actually a producer. It was Benoit Tarlant of Champagne Tarlant that we used to be the importer for. He's now with a national importer, but he actually made the introduction years ago to Eric de Bricis from Champagne Baron Fuente. So that's how we met Baron Fuente.
Mm-hmm. That's cool, and they've been in our portfolio for a long time, right?
Yeah. Now I think more than 10 years now, and I think maybe a lot of people watching, I'm not sure. Maybe if you've met Eric at one of our tent events, you can send us a little message. But I'm confident that somebody who's been to our tent event has met Eric, because he's been one of those guys that's just shown up every time to the tasting. Yeah,
I missed the tent event this year. That was everything changed, but that is always a highlight of the year for me.
Yeah, it was a blow, but
yeah. But next year, hopefully.
Next year, we hope.
Yeah.
But one of the other things I was thinking about is, everybody on New Year's Day, they have their resolutions, and they're going to turn around. They're going to start doing things healthier, and I thought, well, why not show a bottle where people could get a head start on that? And I'm brought out this Bruno Michel Assemblée, and wow, it's kind of hard to get in the picture.
Yeah, you can't.
Gold
We're a little fuzzy, but
yeah, there we go.
There you go.
But the Bruno Michel Assemblée is completely organically grown, and there's a lot of organic growers that get a lot of column inches, and they get a lot of buzz from sommeliers and things. This guy sells almost all of those people their organic compost, and he's one of the guys that people go to for advice. There's Fleury, who is the first down in the Hole, who we've also imported off and on forever. They were the godfathers of biodynamics and organics, the return to organics, I should say, in Champagne, since agrochemicals have only been with us for about 100 years. But these guys, too, they're one of the original ones, and they're from a very, very interesting place in Champagne, right south of Epernay. And there's basically a shadow from the hills, both the Côte de Blanc facing east, and then also on the north side, basically the whole Marne Valley sort of blocks off this little area that they call the Coteau de Sud Epernay. And that area is one of the coldest in all of Champagne. So this particular one is the Assemblée here. It's 78% of Chardonnay and 22% of Meunier. Basically, they don't grow Pinot Noir there because it's too cold to get it ripe.
I thought Meunier also liked a lot of sun. Does it do well in the cold?
It can do. It's indigenous to Champagne, so it can handle the cold. It doesn't handle. It doesn't handle wet weather. It can be prone to rot. So if rain comes, it can definitely handle getting rained on. But if the rain comes too early, when it should still be snow in Champagne but isn't anymore, there can be problems with rot with it. But this is an extremely fresh style, and completely organically grown, and really a lovely wine. And I think we've got a bottle coming to you, Kate, so you should look out for that.
Oh, really? Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
It might be in the LA store with your name on it right now. So,
I'm going there tomorrow.
All right. Well, I think it'll be waiting for you. But that one, I really like that one very much with shellfish. And, you know, a big tradition in California is Dungeness crab.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we're going to have the local stuff. I guess they've been fighting about the prices and whether it's going to happen or not. But that goes very, very well with oysters. It goes very, very well with pretty much any shellfish.
So I'm wondering about your own personal taste. Do you love sort of the racier, fresher style, or do you like the toasty style, or are you just sort of a egalitarian lover of all the styles?
I really like both. I think that for the aperitif, I like the racier style, but you know, I also love those toastier styles with food. And you know, we drink a lot of champagne throughout the meal here, and I think I don't know, maybe people out there who are watching, you know, have a plan to do one bottle throughout the meal, or maybe get into a second one. But I think that's, you know, most often my own personal decision, whether to take something that's in a racier style or in a toastier style, comes down to what I'm going to be having for food with it.
Right.
So, you know, these two that we've talked about so far, they're definitely bookends. You know, the Assemblée is definitely way more on the racy side, and the Baron Fuente Esprit is definitely way more on the toasty side. I couldn't pick a favorite between the two wines, and they're both the same price.
Yeah.
But if it was going to be sushi, it would definitely be this, and if it was going to be, you know, some sort of a salmon dish or something like that, then it would definitely be this. Or, you know, even with charcuterie, one thing that's nice about this is, you know, it grows together with Brie de Meaux. So the Brie cheese, one of the most famous areas for growing Brie, is Meaux, which is an area that's like right next to Charlie-sur-Marne, and that's just a magnificent wine for you know, for like a warm Brie appetizer or something like that. And it's not a
You
surprise.
guys eat so well. I mean, I love your blog because you really help me understand what to know about each champagne, but also because you guys just eat well. I'm always drooling as I'm editing your blogs. And I know Cindy is a great chef.
Well, my belly's out of the picture.
So do you guys build your meal around the wine, or do you build your wine or pick your wine based on what you're going to eat?
I definitely have to say I'm guilty for building it around the wine, and drive my wife nuts with steak and claret every Friday. She's like, well, what did I marry into? You know, doomed to be having the same meal every Friday forever. You know.
But if you were going to pick one meal to have weekly, that's, you know, not a bad. I would sign up for that.
Sometimes I have to say, you know, this is about our job, you know, and loyalty. I'm really leaning on her hard to get my steak and claret on Friday.
Yeah, it's for research. It's all professional development.
But the other bottle that I had picked out, you know, for something that's a little bit, well, something that's more of a splurge, you know, but keeping it on that sort of more under the radar idea, is this the Laurent Perrier Garciac. This is the 24th iteration of this wine. So over the course of 65 years, this is only you know, the 24th one that they've made. It's, you know, while something like Dom Perignon is undoubtedly in the top 5 highest production champagnes, period, this is the tank room for Garciac is smaller than half of the sales floor in LA or half of the sales floor in Redwood City.
Hmm.
It's very, very small, and it's also very long aged. This is based on 2007, so it's had more than a decade on the lees. But it also has reserves from 6 and 4, so they only pick vintage years. They only use Grand Cru fruit, and they make it in a small enough. They make a small enough amount of it that they just don't. They just don't have to cut any corners on it. And we drank this bottle on. We drank it on Christmas Eve, and we had it with a black truffle risotto.
Oh, wow.
Not on purpose. We actually had a Nebbiolo to go with the truffle risotto, but we'd open this as the aperitif, and
just kept going.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was amazing how it came off as delicate and bright and lovely as an aperitif, but it had more power than the Nebbiolo that we'd opened in a lot of ways, especially in terms of the length of the wine. And this is one of those ones where, if you were to ask me, well, is this in the toasty style or is it in the refreshing style? I couldn't tell you. It does both, and that's what you pay the $150 for. I mean, it's right. Not a cheap bottle of champagne, but it's also not a green banana. We're on 2012 for Cristal, which is a great wine. We're on 2010 for Dom Perignon. And the youngest element in this is from 2007. It has elements from 6 and 4 in it.
Yeah,
so,
wow.
To me, this for a Tête de Cuvée that you buy off the shelf is pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. So speaking of age, I know you like aged champagne. I went back and reread your the blog that you wrote last year about 20 years, and we did a little Q&A. And you said you liked aged champagne. So, and you have your own cellar. Yes. How do we know when a champagne is going to stand up and last for 10 years? Or can you give us a little bit of insight into our own practices and when we should age a champagne?
Most certainly. Good quality non-vintage champagne improves unambiguously for 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
So,
just across the board.
Yeah. It's another setup. I mean, I had, if in good storage conditions, I mean, that's really the key, is that champagne does not like bad storage. It's very sensitive to temperature variation, more so than a lot of other wines. The big deal, well, if you talk to the champagne producers, they'll tell you, oh, just drink it. Just drink it. And the reason they say that is because they have the best storage conditions on the planet. 60 feet under the earth,
yeah,
chalk caves. They're perfect. But the thing that they miss is that even though their storage might be better than ours, that doesn't mean that ours isn't good. And if you have a home wine cellar, buying enough non-vintage champagne of, like, let's say you love Louis Roederer non-vintage, or you love L'Amour non-vintage, or you love the Laurent Perrier La Cuvée non-vintage, the Biacart Reserve, whatever it may be. If you can buy that little bit extra to save for a year, I promise you that you will lose nothing in terms of freshness. What you'll get is much better integration of the flavors. and a little bit more complexity, but no trade-off for freshness. Now on the vintage end, the best vintages, the best champagnes and the best vintages last as long as any other wine. And for me, my top three champagnes have all been 64s.
And how much later did you drink those?
All fairly recently, all within the last 5 or 10 years, yeah. And that was a magnificent vintage in Champagne, and they've stood the test of time. And I think that there's, we have the 08s that are still around that are going to be, multi-generational agers. I also think that the 14s that are starting to come out could really surprise people with being, having maybe more than one generation in them. I mean, the 14s remind me so much of the style of the 88s and the 4s. And, I don't know if anybody out there who's watching has had an 04 champagne lately. Definitely a vintage that people thought was good, but didn't talk a lot about. They're pretty good.
Yeah. Underappreciated, right?
Underappreciated, and it was because it was a long, cool growing season. It was what they would call a normal year for vintage champagne in the past. The problem is that with a place that's Fargo, North Dakota, Winnipeg, Canada latitude, one of the northernmost of all the fine wine growing regions in the world, probably the only exceptions being in Germany for really established fine wine growing regions. Climate change has really mixed things up, and it hasn't caused there to be less great vintages. There's probably been more great vintages because of the marginal heating of the climate. But what it has done is just randomized everything. And when 96 came along, they'd never seen anything like it until 08, where it happened again. And that's part of the reason that the 08s are so great, is that they had the practice of making the 96s once. And when those same crazy weather conditions came again, they were prepared.
Was it just sporadic? I mean, just different conditions happening?
It's just like the weather here in California. I was born here, lived here all of my life, and I never remembered choking on smoke or having a November with no rain, until recently. So just like anywhere else, things are changing. But going back to vintages like 14, which are starting to roll out, and 04 and 88, that's three vintages over the course of, I guess, 4 decades, when they used to expect those kind of climatic conditions twice or 3 times a decade. Long, even, cool growing season. It just doesn't happen that often anymore.
Do you find that the wines are riper now? Because, I imagine it's just warmer. And then will they last as long? If they're not getting the long, consistent, cool growing season on the regular, are they still going to last for decades?
That's a good question. 2003 was the warmest vintage since 1852.
Wow.
Then 2015 came along and was the warmest ever. And then 2018 was the warmest ever. And 2019, right in there with those. So, it's hard to say, but traditionally, warm vintages like 59, I mean, that's an old one, an old warm vintage that's legendary, and that's held up very, very well. So it's hard to say. I mean, I think that for the vintage stuff is less than 10% of the production.
Right, that's true.
Less. You come into K&L, or well, you don't come into K&L anymore. I'm sorry. I wish you did. Wish I saw you all. But if you look on our website, about half of our selection is vintage dated. In the U.S. market in general, there's a lot of vintage dated stuff, but the supply is really tiny. I mean, it's definitely far less than 10% of what's produced. So, the selection that the producers are able to make when they make a vintage wine, you should be able to trust. If you can trust the producer, you can trust that it'll be able to last.
Right, because they wouldn't make it if they didn't believe in it and want to put their stamp on it. Yeah, that makes sense.
The bigger concern with the changing climate is for just the brute non-vintage level of quality, and for now it hasn't been affected, but more than the warming, well, because of the warming, there's a big problem with spring frost. So in Champagne, you get these warm days in the spring, which cause premature bud break, and then you get the regular weather coming back and killing the crop, so there is no crop, and that's definitely more of the immediate concern than stuff being too ripe. But I would say that for a practical consideration, one of the things that I'm always telling customers and friends and champagne lovers about to be careful about is the dosage number. People get very caught up, like, oh, how many grams per liter? Is it 8 grams? Is it 6 grams? Is it 4 grams per liter of sugar for dosage? And I'm here to tell you, I've tasted a lot of 4-gram champagne that tastes sweeter than 10-gram champagne tasted at the beginning of my career.
Right, that's a good point. You really do. The winemakers do have a lot of say over the final product based on dosage, right?
Yeah. So, for me, the dosage number is it's one of those technical details that is one that it can be interesting for the champagne lover to know, but it's very, very hard to make judgments on how sweet or dry something's going to be based on that number. For instance, we right now have the 2012 Louis Roeder or Brut Nature in stock, which is their biodynamically farmed, zero dosage, sort of postmodern champagne style that they make, all from the village of Cumières, which is a south-facing amphitheater on the Valley of the Marne. Very, very, very ripe terroir, Cumières. And that wine, is it 0? It could be 8. It could be 7. It could be. I mean, it just doesn't taste like it's a zero dosage champagne.
And that's all from the fruit.
Yeah, it's all just because it's ripe enough that it doesn't need the dosage. So, that's one of the reasons that I didn't talk about the dosages of the champagnes we talked about today. I mean, for instance, this, the Bruno Michel, it says right on the back, so it must be true, 6 grams per liter. But I've actually done, when Bruno passed away, but when Bruno was alive, I've had the opportunity to do a couple of dosage trials with him, and he does dosage trial. Everybody does dosage trials in Champagne. They all do it blind. And I remember the first time doing it with him was the first time I ever did it. This was probably 10 years ago now. And I said to him, Bruno, it's not linear. the sugar's not linear. I mean, it was this big discovery for me. It's like, what do you think I do this for? You think I don't have anything else to do? You know, I could be on my tractor right now. Like, there's stuff to do in my vineyard. I'm only doing this trial because it's the only way to do it, is to
So it kind
taste
of opened your mind that it wasn't just a formula, you know, the
absolutely
A plus B
not
equals
a
C.
formula for the
It's all
producers.
instinct, I imagine.
And another thing is that about dosage is that you know, they'll give you a number, and the number they usually give you is the dosage, which is the starting point. So the Champenois don't have to disgorge a whole batch at once. They only need to disgorge what they're going to be selling 6 months from now. And they prefer, I mean, why would you disgorge it early if it's just getting better?
Right.
Aging on the lees, right? And also that means that you got to spend money on corks. You got to spend money on foil, and you got to spend all this money to make. If you're doing it too soon, it just doesn't make any sense because the champagne's just getting better on the lees. The second disgorgement is almost always a lower dosage than the first. There is a not completely linear, but a fairly linear relationship between between age and the need of a particular wine for a certain amount of dosage. So, you know, on the really big scale stuff, the Moet, like Moet Imperial, which is the largest production champagne, they, you know, they know that they're going to be starting off at one dosage and ending up with the final disgorgement at a lower one.
So they list the first one? Is that the
usually, I mean, they just need something that people ask what the dosage is, and you need to be able to tell people something.
Yeah. The thick layers, it doesn't matter.
You don't always have all this time on.
Don't worry about dosage. Trust the winemaker.
Yeah, on Instagram Live to talk about the sort of, well, the more real answer, which is you know, not as straightforward. You know, the how dry or sweet it ends up tasting in the end has everything to do with the amount of acidity and other flavors that are in there and how they interact with the sugar. And you know, the sugar to me usually tends to bring out more of the Pinot Noir characteristics. So the times I've done the dosage trial with stuff that's a blend, you know, you usually the sugar tends to bring out the Pinot earlier, or you know, maybe it's the lack of sugar makes you think that it's higher acid and therefore has more Chardonnay in it when the dosage is lower. But it's just not totally straightforward thing.
Well, I've read that, you know, to sort of not counteract, but to just account for climate change in Bordeaux, they're talking about new varietals. I mean, it's still all hypothetical, but is that something that would happen in Champagne?
Most certainly, and you know, my friends at Champagne Aspasie were, you know, among the first to start messing around with the old varieties. Again, the old indigenous Champagne varieties. There's a couple of very, very high acid old varieties, and they're a pain. So, you know, they started small in Champagne, messing around with Arbonne, you know, which seems, you know, Arbonne seems to be pretty good. They're starting to get that figured out. There's another one called Melier, which is kind of more fickle, but those are variety, both a couple of different varieties that are hard. They tend to harvest later. Well, they have to harvest them later, and they're very high in acidity. And something that they're looking to is maybe something to keep the wines fresher in the future. But they're not out of tricks for different ways of, you know, managing the canopy, of managing the way even how close to the ground things are, because it used to be in Champagne that, I mean, all of the vines were just down so super low. I mean,
Right.
just backbreaking harvest work compared to here in California, where things
To
tend
capture all the warmth from the ground. Yeah.
Exactly. And now, they're bringing them up a little bit more, and they've got a lot of room to do more of that if they need to. But the varieties are definitely something they're looking at too.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating to see what happens in the next, I don't know, 10 or 20 years.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of change, but I think that Champagne is very, very well organized, and the committee Champagne has had a lot of investment from the growers, a lot of investment from the negociants to conduct a lot of really good research. So I think they're pretty well positioned to do a good job.
No, I'm sure they will. I have no doubt. I mean, everybody's so invested in the Champagne brand. I'm sure that nobody would let it fall apart.
No, hopefully not.
No, I mean, no, of course not. But I want to say that I love what you've built with Champagne. I think that the amount of grower producer Champagne that we have that is just so delicious and so affordable makes it great for me, because I can drink it so much more regularly than I ever could before working for KNL. So I think you've done a really good job, and I wanted to say thanks for that.
Well, thank you for drinking this stuff.
I do. I love this stuff. I drink it. But I always find new gems to try out in your program. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming on and talking to us about some of your favorites and sharing all your insider knowledge.
Did anybody out there on Instagram land let us know what they're going to be drinking tonight or on New Year's? Anybody? I don't know if you guys are all here for the beginning, but this is what I'm going to be drinking with my Cipino.
I'm looking through the messages, but nobody has shared that yet. What are y'all drinking?
What are y'all drinking? Hopefully, I know people oftentimes ask, like, oh, how big is that New Year's, between New Year's and or between Christmas and New Year's rush, and generally it tends to not be as big as people are going to think. People would think, because so many people go out. Oh, Sandy with the 2000 Krug, very nice.
Wow. Come over.
Oh, and some Drapier. Oh, what a great choice. Look at that, some 01 Dawn. Now there's an unknown vintage for you. Those 01s. That was a cold year. I'd never forget freezing my tail off in Champagne in 01. But from Magnum, that should be a killer. Yeah, you see, and that's the other thing. People go to their cellar. The Champagne nuts, they go to their cellar, so they don't come to K&L. They're pulling some out of their cellar. But I think also this year, it's gonna. Oh wow, the rosé, the 03 Dom Rosé. That is a really interesting wine. 03, famously just scorching hot. They lost 2/3 of their of the Chardonnay crop overnight to a frost. So usually in warm vintages, they use a lot of Chardonnay to sort of freshen them up. 03, there was no Chardonnay around, but that Dom Rosé, it's got this unbelievably ripe OVA red wine in it, and it's so good. 99 Ballet Dart. That's a delicious one, Deja. That's definitely a super rich one. I saw a question there come through about the difference between English sparkling wine and champagne at a given price point. I would say that if there's any place in the world that the Champenois have a reason to be concerned about, it's those southern England producers. They're on exactly the same band of chalk that's in Champagne, and they're further north. So the climate is it's really, really good there. My beef for right now is that the vines are very young. The wines tend to be young. They tend to release them quite young, and they're a little expensive because basically you're paying for more of the startup costs. While like Folly Dart, Deja posted there, they've been growing since 1621.
Wow.
I might be wrong on the 21, but I'm not wrong on the 16 part. So a lot of these producers are Champagne Louis Roeder are founded in 1776, same year as the U.S. You're not paying their startup costs.
Yeah.
So
that is some institutional knowledge there.
I just think that I think that the English sparkling wines are some of the most interesting, and I think in the future they're going to be they're going to be some good healthy competition for Champagne. But for right now, for me, they tend to run just a little bit expensive, but not Napa Cabernet expensive, so that's a good thing.
Well, does anybody else have any questions while we're here? It's a great time to pick Gary's brain.
No, this is really nice. Thank you so much. I wish that joined in sooner.
We should do this again. I mean, this is fun. This is easy. It's a great way to get to talk to people that we don't get to see every day anymore. So please, let's do it again.
Well, thank you all for your comments, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for having me.
Well, Happy New Year, everyone, and Happy New Year, Gary. Thank you, guys.
Happy New Year.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.